Welcome to the Owning Your Sexual Self podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Main, awesome wife and dog mom for life. I'm a sex therapist turned sex coach, and I run a successful business selling relationship enhancement products. I absolutely love talking about all things sex. So you can expect this podcast to explore all things related to women's sexual health because that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help you discover and embrace what brings you pleasure so that you can own your sexual self. If that sounds good to you, then keep listening and let's fucking do this. Hey. All right. So it may be aware or not aware. Well, okay. You may be aware or not aware that not only do I do coaching with women, but I also do coaching with men. Over the past few months, I joined Sex and Love Co. as one of their sex coaches. And through this process of joining this team, I have had several more referrals coming through that were of male people. And this has been quite interesting. When I worked in sex therapy, I did have quite a bit of male clients. And through my work with Pure Romance, I primarily work with women. So when you see me on social media or just in my day-to-day practice and coaching and just all services, really, my work is really more centered around women's sexual health. However, there is such a near and dear place in my heart for working with men, specifically the men that are willing to show up and are wanting to do the work. You've heard me talk about this in recent podcasts, such as the What Women Want in Relationships. That was a podcast that has really been geared towards men. And by the way, if you're a man listening to this and you haven't yet listened to that podcast, highly recommend checking that out for sure. That's definitely going to help strengthen your relationship and the way that you show up as the masculine in that relationship. Now, there are a number of things that men might seek out sex coaching, sex therapy, sex counseling for. In fact, there are really common 9 concerns that I've found. This might be low or no sexual desire, early ejaculation or pre-ejaculation, erectile dysfunction, delayed ejaculation, sexual inhibition, some body dysmorphia issues, social or dating skills kind of needing to be strengthened or really just learned, desire for better pleasure or more frequent pleasure, and then finally sexual trauma. And this, I would say, the main thing that I have found in my practice, again, the number one thing that men are coming to me with is erectile dysfunction, some form of erectile dysfunction, either not being able to get an erection, not being able to keep an erection, coming too soon, or coming way too late in their opinion. So I wanted to record this podcast both just to provide some education for you, but also give you some tips and just some, knowledge and skills really around erectile dysfunction. So this podcast is specifically for if you are in a relationship with somebody that has erectile dysfunction, or if you yourself listening has erectile dysfunction, this would be for you. So when it comes to coaching, now here's the thing. Yes, I know I'm a sex coach and I highly recommend getting a coach or getting some sort of mentor, a person that can help you along, help you work along with these things that you're experiencing. However, first and foremost, and I know this is going to be really hard to hear because most men that I've worked with, most men that I know in my life, they don't like going to the doctor. They don't like going to the doctor, and let alone if they are going to the doctor, they feel nervous, they feel maybe embarrassed or shamed to bring up issues surrounding their penis or their sexuality. But this is really step one. Step one is going to the doctor and actually making sure that you can rule out any possible physical or physiological causes of your sexual concern. Now, you might mention this to a primary care doctor, but really the type of doctor that you're going to want to see is a urologist. This is going to be the person that's going to really be the more of the specialist in this area of a men's sexual concerns, such as ED. All right. So first and foremost, ruling out those physical or physiological causes of the sexual concern, that is important because then, and this is what I've really found, the majority of men that are struggling with something like ED, it really does typically come down to something mentally related. And when I say mentally, that could mean either that pressure to perform, pressure to get an erection, that worry or frustration that you might be coming too quick or coming too long. All of this is playing a role into ED. Now, in my work as a coach, what I do with men is really kind of backtrack to when the ED started. When did they start to notice this? Is it something that just started along for them, or is it something that they've been experiencing the majority of their sexual life? And what I find with men is that, again, just like they don't like usually talking to doctors, they also really don't like to dwell on the past. Usually people that are coming into this type of work, specifically men, what I find is that they are wanting the fast track. They are wanting to get results as quick as possible once they've identified this problem, and then that once they've committed to resolving this. However, men really do, I find, respond well to sex coaching because it's finally a person that is there for them and really wanting to step up and meet their needs. Now, you might have a partner that is, generally wanting to help and being supportive in this realm, and I 1000% applaud that partner. However, just like I tell my husband, I am your wife, I am your partner, I am your supportive person. However, I cannot also be your therapist. I cannot also be your sex coach in a way, right? So that is really the important part here. There are things that our partners struggle with or are challenged by throughout their lives that we are not necessarily the expert in. So again, if you have a partner or if you are the partner that's listening to this podcast, I'm urging you to be that supportive person. Don't try to be the person that is trying to fix the issue. I know that there are tons of articles out there, again, around ED and skills and things and treatments and all of that. However, I'm telling you, it is majorly more receptive from their end if they are hearing it from someone that they deem as a professional, someone that they deem as that trustworthy person. Again, not saying that you can't be seen as a professional or you can't be seen as trustworthy, but I'm telling you, it's like church and state, being able to keep those things separately and just allowing yourself to be in that supportive role is really going to serve your relationship and the progress of your partner's ED. It's going to just progress it along quite well. So you'll be also happy to know, I get asked this often, what's the difference between therapy and what's the difference between coaching? Now, with therapy, I found that there's really more so a lot of that work that is going to look in the deeper past rooted issues around the problem that is presenting. Now, with coaching, we really do focus more on the current state of the man's sex life and what his desired outcome is in coming to this work. Now, I will say personally, with my expertise, you all know I come from that sex therapy background. While now I serve more in a coaching role, those therapy things still come to play in my work. And I love this part because I really feel like people are getting the best of both worlds with me, because in our early work together and how my coaching, one-on-one coaching usually works with people, is in a 3-month time frame. So you would get 12 total calls over the course of 3 months. And so we are going to look a little bit in that past work. We're not going to stay very long in the past, but as I said, we really want to find where the root of this issue started. So looking back in the past is going to help serve us in where you are right now when it comes to, again, this erectile dysfunction, delayed ejaculation, or premature ejaculation. All right, so let's talk first about early ejaculation. I changed my mind now that I'm recording. I really want to cover erectile dysfunction, early ejaculation, and delayed ejaculation because, I feel like these are the main things. When somebody's coming to me with ED, one or two or all of these things are present when I'm working with them. So early ejaculation is, as you've heard me say, this could also be known as premature ejaculation. Now, some people don't like to call it premature ejaculation. I 1000% get that, because it really is serving the message that you've either come too soon, you've disappointed your partner, and we don't want you feeling like a failure. We don't want to be internalizing that message, for you to be internalizing that message, and for you to be feeling like a failure, because in the long run, that is not serving you in any positive way to help resolve what is happening to you during your sexual experiences. So really reframing your language to mention this as early or rapid ejaculation, it really does come off more neutral. And early ejaculation is actually the most common sexual complaint of men under 40. Statistics from a variety of sources put the number of men with this concern ranging from a low of 30% to a high of 70%. That is so many people. Now, I want to do a little bit of education here because we need to normalize something. The average length of sex, okay, the average length of sex, including foreplay, is typically 6 to 13 minutes. 6 to 13 minutes. That's including foreplay. The average sex, if you are counting your starting point from penetration to finishing ejaculation, is on average 5 minutes. So this is the first and foremost thing when I'm starting to work with men that are coming to me for this. I ask that question. All right, how long? When you say you're having early ejaculation, are we talking 30 seconds? Are we talking 1 minute? Are we talking as soon as penis enters vagina? What are we talking here? Are we talking 10 minutes, right? Like getting very clear on what it is that they're going with. And this really is the reason why when I take on one-on-one clients, I do that first discovery call with them. I want to make sure that I'm providing them with resources. I want to make sure I'm a good fit. And a lot of times I get people on this call and I'm like, okay, so let me actually normalize for you what you're experiencing. And then here is A, B, and C things that I can give you very quickly here to help you last longer. But sometimes people are coming on calls looking for coaching when really it's not a problem. Really, they're falling into the normal sex life, right? Or sex average length, if you will. So the causes of early ejaculation can really range from something as subtle as slight anxiety about performance, or something more obvious, such as somebody like, let's say, is a really type A personality. They have really self-pressuring techniques and characteristics to themselves. Then we look at the possibility of masturbation style. This is actually a very common cause of early ejaculation. It's that habituation or that masturbation where the quick release is desired. Maybe it was even necessary. So yeah, thinking back to the masturbation style from that childhood experience, maybe they were in a situation where, again, that quick release was desired or even necessary, meaning they had to finish quickly because parents were home, fear of getting caught, any of those things, right? Shame that was present. So the style of achieving that quick release was really learned at such an early age. And this unconsciously gets replicated in adults when having sex. The man feels pressured to hurry without understanding why and releases his ejaculate before he and his partner would like. So again, thinking through of your masturbation style, and this is going to come up in the other two concerns as well, but thinking through how you learned about masturbation and what typically your go-to style of masturbation is really going to help you when it comes to early ejaculation. Now, the shyness or the overexcitement. Sexual shyness or shame about being sexual causes many men to feel overwhelmed or conflicted about sex. A man may actually ejaculate too quickly out of the hidden desire to end sex. Men who haven't been sexually active for a very long time, or men who have infrequent sex with their partners, may be shy or overly excited at the very idea of intimacy. There's been men that I've worked with that have told me that even just that sensation of being inside of a woman or inside of a man after a long time of wanting to be there, then turn them into that stereotypical 1 minute man. So all the more reason to continue engaging in self-pleasure practices and engaging in frequent sex with your partners. Okay, now performance anxiety. This is actually a big one. This is specifically anxiety caused by past early ejaculation experiences, meaning just because it may have happened in the past, that means it's likely going to happen again. This man, if this is what's showing up for you, really working to improve your sex technique, including becoming better at bringing a woman to orgasm orally and manually, really bringing her to orgasm without those penetration things is going to help increase your confidence, going to help you feel more confident in the ability to please her, and ultimately then have less anxiety. This will also allow you to be able to control your ejaculation more effectively. Now, finally, that type A personality. Some men just do everything fast. Listen, if they're eating fast, they chew their food fast, they drive too fast, they're rushing throughout life, no wonder they're also ejaculating too quickly. If a man can learn to really slow things down, both in his self pleasure practices and also when he is being intimate with a partner, this is really, really, really going to serve well around if they're experiencing early ejaculation. So, here are some solution options for helping with early ejaculation. First and foremost, using some medical intervention. Surprisingly, SSRI medications like Prozac, Zoloft, anything like that, whose negative side effects include decreased sexual desire and less intense orgasm, can actually be a good treatment for early ejaculation. Viagra and things like Cialis can also help a man sustain his erection even after the orgasmic release, making these medications also useful in assisting with EE. Now, I'm not one to really say medications are the first and foremost. I think that it's important to try other things. I prefer more holistic approaches to sex work, but I did want to mention that, there are medications out there available. And what I find is that, especially depending on the age of the man, let's say if they're under 40, typically Viagra and Cialis have more of that later life trend, if you will. So when I've been working with men, and I bring up Viagra or Cialis, they're like, "Oh my gosh, like, oh, I thought that was for older men," right? When you see men typically in their 50s, 60s that are using these types of medications, or you think of, again, the older population. So there can be some shame associated with this with men that are considering taking medications to help with any sort of ED issues. So that's again why I'm saying don't just go straight for the medicine. And as I just mentioned, like those SSRIs and things, they might have those more negative side effects like decreased sexual desire. And my guess is that likely they're not wanting that. They're wanting to have more successful sex, longer intimate sex. So decreased sexual desire isn't probably a side effect that they're willing to accept. All right, now, of course, y'all know I'm in the toy industry. So, cock rings, penis rings, however you want to call them, whether they vibrate or not, these are a great thing to use to be able to add sensation to the penis and actually stop the urge to ejaculate. When you're using these rings, it is constricting blood flow to them. So, this is allowing the penis to stay harder longer, and it allows a little bit more of control when finishing. Some men also like to try creams that numb the penis. This can actually assist in maintaining arousal. Really, I think it comes down to that self-training, really learning control. Ejaculation is just a matter of control. And it is actually the most common method for treating early ejaculation. And learning how to recognize what's happening in your head and before the body is ejaculating is going to be super, super helpful for you. So, as I mentioned, some self pleasure practices, doing that self training, learning that mental focus. So, learning to stop worrying about what's going to happen next and focusing really on the sensations of what is happening in the moment. If you are paying attention to listening to those thoughts, such as, am I going to come too soon, or will I lose this erection? Try to really silence these, acknowledge them, and then try to bring more mindfulness in, again, focusing on what is happening in that moment, focusing on the sensations, focusing on the eroticism. There's also this thing that I refer to as the point of no return when it comes to men's pleasure. So essentially, once men reach this point, this is known as your ejaculatory inevitability, then there is no turning back. Once you get this point, you will ejaculate. So if you can learn your body in a way to really start to recognize that point so that you can stop yourself before getting there, that is going to help as well. There's also the squeeze technique that you can use. When you can start to read the signs of getting to that point of no return, and you can combine that with being able to slow down arousal, then you can start to kind of resist that urge to be able to ejaculate. The squeeze technique was actually developed by Masters and Johnson. Ugh, if you've never watched Masters of Sex on Hulu, I believe it was Hulu, maybe it was Showtime, I can't remember. Great show. But essentially, the squeeze technique includes you holding the base of an erect penis with your hands tightly, almost like I was mentioning with the cock ring. It would constrict that blood flow. You're going to do the same thing with your hands. So you're going to hold tightly to be able to stop the urge to release, or you can actually apply pressure to the frenulum. The frenulum is really that sensitive spot right underneath the head of the penis where typically circumcision has happened. Please do always remember any of these things to practice with your solo pleasure first. Practicing solo first gives you that confidence to then be able to take these things that you've learned and take them into those intimate experiences with a partner. When you are ready, begin practicing with your partner. Again, they're likely wanting to help you through this. We're hoping that you do have that supportive partner on the other end. And so if you're wanting to have a partner help you with this squeeze technique, for instance, she or they would be using their hand instead of your hand. Lastly, giving yourself permission if you feel that you are getting to that point of no return, allowing yourself again to slow down or even stop. Simply stopping any movement that's happening inside of your partner, maybe resting your penis inside of your partner, removing your penis from inside your partner altogether, and maybe start using some hand play or some oral play. Maybe you begin cuddling, some grounding techniques, anything like that. Or again, pressing firmly against the frenulum. All right, now we're moving into erectile dysfunction. And this essentially is when a man is not able to get or sustain an erection long enough to penetrate a vagina or any other orifice that he wishes. Then he suffers from erectile dysfunction. About 1 in 10 men and over 50% of men over the age of 50 have experienced erectile dysfunction. While we mentioned, yes, Viagra has radically changed this for men over time, again, young men typically have those sort of feelings towards Viagra. So again, the drugs, medications are not always the answer to everything. And what I found is that there's really those two type of erectile dysfunction sufferers, those who cannot produce an erection and those who cannot keep one. So some common causes of erectile dysfunction, again, you have those physical ones and then you have those more mental ones. So it could be blood flow issues, it could be certain medications that somebody is on, such as heart and blood pressure medications, or even over-the-counter cold and sinus remedies can alter your body's blood flow, affecting erections. Diseases such as diabetes can attribute to erectile dysfunction. Psychological issues like sexual shyness, inhibitions, guilt, depression, anxiety, repressed anger, and insecurity about masculinity and sexuality can render a man incapable of getting or sustaining an erection. Relationship issues, unresolved issues and anger in a relationship can really make a man lose his erection with his partner, if not with others as well. So as we mentioned, there are those more prescription drugs that could be an option, such as Viagra and Cialis. However, there are other herbs and alternative medicines, such as yohimbe. I might be saying that wrong. It's a sexual stimulant made from an African tree bark. It was prescribed frequently by a urologist before Viagra and is actually still used successfully by men. For men who experience severe side effects from Viagra, doctors also still prescribe self-injected medications such as prostaglandin E. I may be saying that wrong. Again, I'm not a doctor, so don't expect me how to pronounce all these crazy ass medications. And then you have medical devices. So we mentioned penis rings earlier. There are also penis pumps. Now, a good pump can produce a firm erection via suction that lasts through a lovemaking session. The pump is a good choice for a man that has situational ED caused by insecurity with a new partner. Sexual stimulants and pumps are most effective for men who can't produce an erection, whereas pills will work better for men who can't sustain one. There is also some behavioral training that we could take you through. Not going to go into too much detail here. This is really something that would be more long-term, for similar to the steps that we would take for treating early ejaculation. but there's things that we can also work on to be able to help you sustain an erection. And then, of course, couples coaching. Whether you're doing this work individually or you want to do this work with a partner, if the problem is in a relationship, bringing a partner into the coaching process may benefit the both of you, again, in understanding and learning how to be a support for each other. All right, and lastly, we have the delayed ejaculation. So this really is only occurring in about 10% of men. Delayed ejaculation is easy to identify, yet the most difficult concern to treat. This is essentially when a man is feeling that he needs to have an orgasm or feeling like an orgasm is coming on, but cannot release with ejaculate. And I want to point out here that orgasms in men are really occurring in two different phases. There's first that feeling of orgasm when the penis is starting to fill with blood, that is essentially what has created the erection. And then there's that release of the seminal fluids in the ejaculatory phase of the orgasm. So really what I found that there are three major factors that relate to delayed ejaculation. First, medical conditions. Some men suffer from a condition known as retrograde ejaculation, in which their ejaculate reverses back into the abdominal cavity, not out of their urethra. Delayed ejaculation is also one of the negative sexual side effects of some antidepressants. Second, the man's intimacy issues. Failing to release ejaculate can be an indicator of distress of a partner or the relationship. Sometimes it only occurs at the start of a new sexual relationships, and other times it can be an ongoing problem within the relationship. Lastly, it could be his partner's issues. Partners of delayed ejaculation men often try to take on responsibility for his problem, blaming themselves. In trying harder to make him reach orgasm, they may exacerbate the situation. This is where I mentioned earlier, we can be a supportive partner. We can't also be the therapist. We can't also be the sex coach. We can't be the fixer of all things. So, your solutions for delayed ejaculation. If you're thinking that it might be more in terms of something medically related, such as medications, definitely worth having that conversation, talking with a doctor. As I already mentioned, make sure that you are first and foremost mentioning that these things are happening to either your primary care or ask for a referral to a urologist. You could have them do a prescription evaluation to really look over what prescriptions you are currently on to see where some of these negative side effects might be showing up. If you are thinking of working with a coach or therapist or anything like that, it's a matter really of exploring some safety issues. Men who don't feel safe enough to let go with a partner are not unlike women who haven't been orgasmic with a partner. The person with delayed ejaculation really needs positive encouragement and nurturing support. They really need that safe space. So the coaching process gives him that space where he can contemplate risking some of his own safety for the sake of his pleasure. Some men have never felt secure enough emotionally and perhaps even physically to experience the intimate bond that orgasm and ejaculation often provoke during a sexual act. So this is my plug again, sex coaching. If you're experiencing any of these things, if you're a man that's listening to this, if you know a man that's experiencing these, I am more than happy to be that person that gets to hold that space for them. I, again, have worked with people in my previous sex therapy practice, as well as have current clients that are struggling with erectile dysfunction. I love to take them through an exercise called creating their sex timeline. That, again, is a really quick way for them to start thinking back about past sexual experiences, the way they learned about sex, to start to see where the root of these issues may have started. As I said, we don't spend a lot of time in the past, but it's definitely important that we visit that for a bit and then begin to work on where you are now and being able to bring in some of these solutions that we discuss on this podcast, put them into play, talk through them, and really get you to a point of having longer, more frequent, stronger sexual encounters. So I hope that this was all beneficial for you to hear. Again, if you are a man listening to this podcast looking for coaching, I would love to be that person. If you have a partner that is looking for coaching or help around this, I would love to be their person. If it's a partnered relationship, it would be very cool to be able to have the partner on for a call or two to really go through and communicate the things that they're learning and ways to help support each other throughout this. So, all right, y'all. Thank you for listening to this podcast today. Please reach out with any questions, comments, concerns, and feel free to share this podcast along, because this is something, again, I think that a lot of people need to hear. A lot of people need to just feel normal, in a sense, about the experience of some of these things. And that's that. That's all I got. All right, guys. Have a great week, and I will talk to you later.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you loved it, be sure to subscribe so you never miss a thing. And if you loved it so fucking much, be sure to leave a 5-star review. I'll see you next week, and until then, keep owning your sexual self.